Maya Delaney nearly dropped the oversized box of faux cherry blossoms as the sleek black door to the penthouse swung open by itself, automated. Of course, because everything in this building screamed money. She muttered under her breath, rich people and their robot doors. Maya wasn't supposed to be here, not in a place like this. Not surrounded by marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a skyline that looked like it belonged in a movie. But when her event planning assistant called in sick, Maya had no choice but to make the final decor delivery herself. Her company, Delaney and Bloom, had been hired to decorate a luxury rooftop birthday party. The client, no idea, just a name on the invoice, T. Foster. She pushed the cart further into the penthouse, which was so quiet it felt like a museum. The floral arch she designed was perfectly balanced, the silk table runners pressed flat, the centerpieces custom-made. She was proud of this setup until a voice stopped her dead in her tracks. "You're not supposed to be touching that." Maya turned sharply, blinking up at the man walking toward her from the hallway. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp cheekbones and eyes too intense for this early in the morning. He wore a dark sweater rolled at the sleeves and tailored slacks, barefoot like he owned the place, because he did. I was just adjusting the candle alignment," Maya said, forcing a polite smile. "Sorry, didn't realize anyone was home." He raised a brow. "Who are you?" "Maya Delaney." "I run Delaney and Bloom. I'm your decorator." Something flickered in his expression. "You're Maya?" "Yes." I thought Maya was older. She blinked. "I get that a lot." He stepped closer, folding his arms. "I'm Tristan Foster." That name hit her like a gust of wind. The T. Foster from the invoice, the host of the party. And now that she looked closer, the Tristan Foster, CEO of Foster Dynamics, a tech company that had exploded in the last 5 years. She'd seen his face in Forbes, but those pictures didn't do him justice. Maya cleared her throat. "Well, Mr. Foster, the setup is almost complete. I'll be out of your way in 15 minutes. "You're doing all this alone," my assistant called out sick. She reached down, adjusting a gold charger plate. "But it's fine, I've handled worse." Tristan didn't say anything for a second. "Then you do all the design yourself, every inch." He nodded slowly, then looked around the room. "It looks good." "Thanks," she said, a little breathless from the way he was watching her. He walked over to the table, touching the edge of the velvet runner. "You always work events like this?" "No. Usually I send my team for the final setup. I'm more behind the scenes." "Pity," he said, turning back to her. "You being here is the best part of this whole setup." She blinked. Thanks." He grinned, and it hit her that for someone who ran a billion-dollar company, Tristan Foster had a surprisingly disarming smile. Not arrogant, not fake, just real. "I liked the cherry blossoms," he added. "They remind me of Tokyo. I didn't know you'd been." "I lived there for a year when I was 21, cramped studio apartment above a ramen shop, nothing like this." He gestured around the penthouse. Maya tilted her head. "You, living above a ramen shop," he shrugged. "Had to start somewhere." There was a pause. She hadn't expected him to be like this, human, warm, curious, and definitely not this charming. "I should get back to work," she said, turning, trying to ignore the weird flutter in her chest. But before she could move, Tristan said suddenly, "Do you want to stay tonight?" She turned, startled. "Excuse me, for the party," he clarified, stepping closer. "You built all this, you should see it in action." Maya hesitated. She never stayed. It was rule number 2 in her business. Never stay for the party. You weren't a guest, you were the help. But something about the way Tristan was looking at her made her pause. "I don't have a dress," she said. "I'll take care of that." "What?" "I'll send something upstairs for you. My assistant knows people." "Just tell me your size." Maya blinked. "You're serious?" "I'm a CEO," he said with a crooked grin. "I don't joke about luxury gowns." She laughed despite herself, and before she could stop it, she gave him her size. "Done," Tristan said, and it was. A few hours later, Maya stood in the guest suite of the penthouse, looking at the designer gown hanging on the door. It was champagne-colored silk off the shoulder and looked like something ripped from a red carpet. She turned toward the giant mirror and whispered, "What are you doing?" But she already knew. She was stepping into a world that wasn't hers, just for tonight. just to see what it felt like. By the time the party started at sunset, the rooftop was glowing, string lights, gold accents, soft music. Guests in designer clothes laughed and sipped champagne. Maya stood near the edge of the crowd, heart pounding, feeling like an imposter in heels. "Found you." She turned and there he was, Tristan, in a perfectly tailored black suit, dark tie, and that same look in his eyes from earlier. "You look." He trailed off, his voice quieter now, like something no one deserves to look at. Her cheeks warmed. "That's a dangerous compliment, I mean it," he said. "You created this whole night, but you being here, you're the part I keep watching." She laughed nervously. "You really know how to talk to a girl. I don't say things I don't mean." And then he offered his hand. "Come dance with me." Maya hesitated. "I thought this was your party. Don't you have people to impress?" "I'm looking at the only one I want to impress." She took his hand. And under a sky full of stars, on a rooftop that didn't belong to her, in a dress she hadn't bought, Maya danced with the host of the party. The CEO, Tristan Foster, and the way he looked at her, it didn't feel like it was just for tonight. Maya didn't realize how long they'd been dancing until the rooftop began to empty around them. The music had softened, and the air had grown cooler, but neither of them moved to leave. Tristan's hand lingered at her waist, his thumb brushing lightly against the back of her dress. Her heels had started to pinch, but she didn't care. She didn't want to break the spell. "So," Tristan said, his voice low as the last notes of the song faded. "Are you always this calm in chaos?" Maya tilted her head. "What makes you think I'm calm? You navigated a rooftop full of executives, influencers, and impossible egos without blinking. That's rare." "I've worked with worse," she said. "Once had a client who insisted on a winter wonderland theme in August. I had to bring in snow machines." "In Los Angeles." He let out a quiet laugh. "That sounds like a logistical nightmare." It was. But the worst part wasn't the snow, it was the white reindeer she ordered 3 days before the event. Real ones. Tristan raised his eyebrows. "Did you find them?" "I did." "In Alaska." He gave a low whistle. "Remind me never to underestimate you. You'd be surprised what I can pull off when someone backs me into a corner." There was something in the way he watched her, then like he was trying to read between her words. For a beat, neither of them said anything. Then he asked, "Why event planning?" She blinked. "That's a sharp turn. Humor me." Maya looked past him, her gaze catching on the city lights beyond the glass railing. "I grew up in a house where nothing ever stayed beautiful for long. My mom loved to decorate, but we could never afford to make it permanent, so I started creating things that didn't have to last, just moments, nights like this. I guess I liked the idea that one perfect evening could be enough." Tristan didn't respond right away. Then he said more softly, "That's a pretty honest answer. I don't usually give it. Why now? I don't usually meet clients who actually listen." He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time she noticed a flicker of something behind his eyes, not just interest, something heavier. "Come with me," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Where?" "I want to show you something." Maya hesitated, but curiosity tugged harder than reason. She followed him down the staircase inside the penthouse, through a hallway lined with abstract art, and into a room she hadn't seen earlier. He pushed open the tall doors, revealing a space that was nothing like the rest of the apartment. It was a minimal, industrial-style room with tall shelves lined with mechanical parts, metal sketches, and half-assembled prototypes. A workbench stretched along the back wall, filled with tools, soldering irons, and blueprints. The only light came from a desk lamp casting a warm glow over the space. "This is where the company started," he said. Maya turned to him, surprised. "In here, I built the first prototype in a garage in Brooklyn. When I moved here, I rebuilt the setup. Reminds me not to forget where I started." She walked slowly through the space, studying the pieces. "You still build things, not as often, but when my head gets too loud, I come here. It's the only place that still makes sense." Maya reached out and picked up a small metal cube from the desk. It was smooth, but with intricate engravings on each side. "What is this?" "A puzzle box. I designed it when I was 19. It opens in 7 moves." She turned it over in her hands. 7. Most people give up at 5. She handed it back to him. "You're full of surprises," he smiled, but there was a flicker of something unspoken behind his eyes. "You know, I didn't want to throw this party," he said, leaning back against the desk. "My board insisted. Said I needed to be visible for our investors, but I didn't want to be surrounded by people who only see the company." "Then why did you agree?" "Because sometimes it's easier to play the part than fight it." She studied him. "That sounds lonely." "It is." The honesty in his voice cut through whatever defenses she had left. There was no arrogance here, just a man who'd built a tower so high that no one could reach him without an invitation. "Why did you really ask me to stay tonight?" she asked. He didn't flinch. "Because I knew if I let you walk out those doors, I'd regret it." Maya's breath caught. She hadn't expected that, not from him, not so soon. She looked away, heart thudding. "Tristan, I'm not someone who fits into your world." He stepped forward. "You think I care about that? You should. I don't. You don't know me. Then let me." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her instincts screamed to protect herself, to keep things professional, to walk away. But the part of her that had always longed for something real, that part wanted to believe. He reached for her hand, slow, like he was afraid she'd pull away. "I don't want this night to end, not yet." Maya let him take her hand. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt seen. Before she could respond, a chime echoed from somewhere in the penthouse. Tristan glanced toward the hallway, his expression shifting instantly. "That's my assistant's signal," he said. "There's something I need to handle," she nodded, stepping back. "Of course. I won't be long." But as she watched him disappear through the door, Maya felt a chill creep in where his warmth had been. She turned to the puzzle box on the desk and ran her fingers over the engravings. 7 moves. Most people give up at 5. She didn't know it yet, but this night was just the beginning. And some puzzles took more than 7 moves to solve. Maya stood at the expansive glass window of the guest suite, her bare feet on the cool marble floor as the city shimmered below. The gown hung perfectly off her frame, yet she felt oddly exposed, like the moment she stepped out of this penthouse, the illusion would disappear. She hadn't seen Tristan in over 20 minutes. Something about the abruptness of his departure lingered in her chest like unfinished music. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, a woman in a sleek charcoal suit stood waiting, her expression all business. "Miss Delaney?" she asked. "Mr. Foster sent me to escort you downstairs." Maya hesitated. "He didn't say where he was going. He's in the conference lounge on the lower level. There's a situation with the Tokyo office." Her tone didn't invite questions. Maya nodded, brushing a hand through her hair. "All right." As they descended in the private elevator, Maya's thoughts kept circling back to the way Tristan had looked at her earlier, like he didn't care that she didn't belong in this world, like he'd seen something in her that even she struggled to acknowledge. The elevator opened directly into a sleek, muted lounge. A wall of monitors displayed graphs, news tickers, and security feeds. Through a glass wall, she could see him, Tristan, at the head of a long table, speaking in clipped, deliberate tones to 2 men and a woman, each with tablets in hand. The assistant gestured for Maya to wait, then disappeared behind the glass door. Tristan turned as soon as she entered. His eyes found Maya instantly. He excused himself from the conversation and stepped out, the tension in his shoulders easing the moment he reached her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want to pull you into this mess. Is everything all right?" he exhaled. "There was an internal breach, nothing catastrophic, but it needs immediate damage control. Our Tokyo partners are threatening to delay the launch unless I handle it personally." Maya searched his expression. "Go. Do what you need to." His brows drew together. "I don't want to send you off like some stranger." "I'm not your responsibility," she said, softer now, "but I appreciate that you didn't just vanish." He looked at her, then really looked. "I'll be flying out in the morning." "But I'll be back in 3 days," she swallowed. "Okay. I want to see you when I return." Her heart skipped. "We'll see where things land." He gave a small nod, then surprised her by placing a hand gently on her waist and leaning in. His lips brushed just above her cheek, close enough to draw heat but not enough to cross the line. "Thank you for tonight." His voice was low. "It meant more than I expected it to." Then he turned back toward the glass doors, and she watched him slip into the world that demanded so much of him. By the time the car dropped her back at her apartment, the sky was beginning to pale. She stepped inside her modest space, bare walls, a couch with mismatched pillows, the faint scent of eucalyptus from the diffuser she forgot to turn off. She kicked off her shoes, letting the silence wrap around her. It felt strange, like the world she'd just left was a dream she'd accidentally wandered into 3 days past. On the morning of the 4th, a delivery arrived at her office, a cream-colored envelope with no return address. The paper was thick, the kind used for royal invitations. Inside, a single card, embossed with her name and the logo of a private gallery in Tribeca. No message, just a date and time, 7 o'clock that evening. Sienna, her assistant, leaned over her desk. "That looks suspiciously like a date." Maya turned the envelope over in her hands. "It doesn't say that." "It doesn't have to. Look at that font. That's a man with a plan." She hesitated. "But what if it's not from him?" "It's from him," Sienna said with certainty. "And you're going?" Maya arrived at the gallery with her pulse hammering in her ears. The space was quiet, not a single soul inside. The walls were lined with massive canvases, abstract pieces in deep navy and gold, brushed with motion and silence. A security guard nodded once and waved her through to a smaller room in the back. There he was. Tristan stood at the center of the room in a steel gray suit, hands in his pockets, back straight. He turned the second she entered. "You came. I wasn't sure if I should." "I wasn't sure if you would." She stepped closer, her heels echoing against the polished floor. "Is this a public exhibit?" "No," he said. "I rented the space. For tonight. For you." She looked around, stunned. "Why?" "Because I wanted to show you something that wasn't about business or parties or appearances, just something honest." She turned to the nearest painting. "They're beautiful." "They're mine." Maya blinked. "You painted these." "I used to, before the company. Before life became quarterly margins and stakeholder meetings." She moved to the next canvas, her fingers hovering just short of the surface. "They're full of movement, but they feel caged. That's what I felt when I made them." She turned to him, eyes wide. "You're more complicated than I gave you credit for." "I've spent so long being useful," he said. "Being impressive, I forgot what it was like to just be." She took a breath. "Why me, Tristan?" He didn't hesitate. "Because when you walked into my penthouse, you weren't afraid to touch anything. You didn't flinch when you saw who I was. You didn't ask me for anything. And still, you left an imprint." She stared at him. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll give this a chance. Say you won't disappear just because I have more money than sense and no idea how to do this right." She took a step forward. "I don't care about the money, I know. I care about whether you'll still be real when there's no one left to impress." He reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. "Then come find out." She let her fingers close around his. And for the first time, it felt like they were stepping into something not borrowed, not temporary but theirs. A month passed, and nothing about Maya's life looked the same. Her mornings no longer began with coffee in a chipped mug on her studio's worn desk. Now they started with calls from international designers, invitations to collaborate on high-profile events, and couriered samples from vendors who previously wouldn't return her emails. Suddenly, Delaney and Bloom was being whispered about in circles she'd never dared to enter before. It wasn't just because of the party. It was because of the man who had hosted it and the fact that he continued to show up. Tristan didn't overwhelm. He integrated. Slowly, deliberately, as if he knew she'd bolt if he moved too fast. She wasn't a part of his world, not really, but he never asked her to become someone else to fit into it. Instead, he kept finding ways to meet her where she was, like tonight. Maya stepped out of the elevator onto the rooftop of a midtown building she'd never been to before. Not a venue. Not a restaurant, just a flat, open roof with a single string of lights overhead and a long wooden table set for two. Tristan stood at the far end, rolling up his sleeves as he set down a dish. He looked up when she approached, and for the first time in weeks, she saw something close to nervousness in his expression. "You cooked," she said, glancing at the spread bowls of roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, something with saffron and lemon that smelled impossibly good. "I bribed my head chef to teach me," he admitted. "I made a mess of his kitchen, but he said it was edible." She tilted her head. "Why?" Because I wanted to do something that didn't involve reservations about who I am. She took a seat across from him. You're doing a terrible job convincing me you're not the most ridiculous man alive. That's fair, he said, pouring 2 glasses of wine, but I'm hoping I can convince you of something else. She raised an eyebrow. What's that? He hesitated, then leaned forward. That I'm not just fascinated by you, I'm invested in us, in whatever this becomes. Maya didn't respond immediately. Her fingers trailed along the rim of her glass. I've been offered 2 partnerships this week, she said. One of them wants to fund a full rebrand. The other wants to franchise. That's incredible, he said. Which are you leaning toward? Neither, she said simply. They both want to reshape the company, strip out everything that makes it mine, he frowned. Then they're not offering you success. They're offering you control. Her eyes met his, and control doesn't interest me, not if I lose myself in the process. Tristan nodded slowly. Then don't take them, build on your terms. I'm trying. But it's hard to trust that the attention isn't just because of you. His jaw tensed, but he didn't look away. If anyone reduces you to the woman I'm dating instead of the creator you are, then they're not worth your time, she exhaled. You say that like it's easy. It's not, he said. But I've had to fight to be seen for more than what I built. You're fighting to be seen for what you could build next. They're not so different. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. She picked up her fork and tried the chicken. It was slightly overcooked, but the flavors were bold. You didn't burn it, she said. I nearly set the stove on fire, he confessed, but I had a fire blanket nearby. She laughed, and the tension cracked. Later, as they stood at the edge of the rooftop with the city stretching beneath them, Maya leaned against the railing while Tristan stood beside her. You ever think about leaving it all? She asked. He looked sideways at her. The company? No, the pressure, the spotlight. The expectations. All the time, he said, but I've learned that leaving isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's about carving out space inside it. She nodded slowly. I think I'm finding that space too. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. It was a metal cube, sleek, engraved, but different from the one she'd held weeks ago. This one had a narrow band of rose gold running through the center. I made this for you, he said. It opens in 8 moves. The last one only works if you've solved the rest. She turned it over in her hands. Why 8? Because I made it harder, he said. Not because I doubt you, but because I know you'll figure it out. Maya's throat tightened, but she smiled, still trying to impress me. No, he said, just trying to keep up with you. The next few weeks moved fast. Her company landed a contract for a private gala hosted by a European fashion house. Instead of being buried under paperwork, she had a full team, now people she'd chosen, trained, trusted. Sienna had taken over operations, and Maya was finally free to focus on the part she loved, creating. Tristan stayed in the background, never interfering, never hovering, but always supporting. When she had her first solo feature in an industry magazine, he sent her a bouquet so large it required 2 delivery men and a dolly and a note that simply read, "This is only the beginning." One evening, as they walked through Central Park after a quiet dinner, Maya stopped beneath the stone arch near the conservatory pond. You knew who you were when we met, she said. I didn't, Tristan turned to her. And now I do, he reached for her hand. So what does that mean? It means I'm not afraid of the future anymore, she said. Because I'm not building it alone, he didn't speak. Instead, he dropped to one knee, she gasped. You're not serious. He pulled a ring from his coat pocket. It was simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. I can't promise a quiet life, he said. I can't promise I'll always get it right. But I can promise I'll never stop building things that matter, with you. She looked down at him, heart thundering. And I can promise, she said, that I won't run from the life we create. He slid the ring onto her finger, then he stood and kissed her, not like a secret. Not like a stolen moment, but like a beginning. The puzzle box was still unopened when she placed it on the shelf in their shared home a few months later. Not because she couldn't solve it, but because some things are better left unopened until the time is exactly right. And for Maya and Tristan, that time was just beginning. The rain had been falling since morning, steady, quiet, the kind that softened the city's edges. Maya stood in the center of Tristan's atelier, the once private, industrial room now transformed into a shared space. Her sketches were spread across one end of the workbench, while his prototypes lined the far wall. Even the lighting had changed, warmer, gentler, the way she liked it. She adjusted the placement of a mood board and turned as his footsteps echoed behind her. "You're early," she said without looking up. "I wanted to see the finished arrangement before the meeting." Tristan leaned against the doorway, watching her with that same grounded intensity he always carried when something mattered. She stepped aside, revealing the arrangement of concept layouts and palette selections she had prepared for the Foster Foundation's inaugural gala, an event they'd decided to host together, using the proceeds to fund creative scholarships for underrepresented youth. It was the first project where their professional lives consciously overlapped. Tristan took a slow breath. "You've made something that feels like both of us, without compromise," she shrugged, trying to hide the flutter of pride. "I figured we should start as we mean to go on." He crossed the room and gently rested a hand on the edge of the table, careful not to disturb her work. "You know they're going to talk, I expect them to." She met his gaze. "But I'm not hiding behind anyone's name." "Not even yours. You've never hidden from anything." He tilted his head. "Though for the record, I'd still like you to hyphenate." She raised an eyebrow. "Maya Delaney Foster," it has a ring to it. "More like a boardroom echo," she teased, then added, "but I'll think about it." Tristan's phone buzzed in his jacket. He glanced at the screen, then silenced it. Was that the investor from Geneva? Yes. "They've been circling since the Tokyo launch. I'll call back later." He looked at her again. "This is more important." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "I've been thinking about something. Tell me." "I want to start a mentorship program," she said, "not just scholarships. I want to be there hands-on, give students real experience, not just a check and a wish." His eyes lit with something deeper than approval. "You're not just building a business anymore." I never wanted to stop at one. I just didn't know how to begin. Tristan reached into his back pocket and unfolded a small card. "What's that?" He held it out. It was a lease agreement. Her name was on it, and under the address, a studio space in Soho. "Tristan." "It's not a gift," he said quickly. "It's an investment. I want you to have a space for the program. You design it, you run it. I'll cover the first year's costs, but it'll be yours." She stared at him, the edges of the paper trembling in her hands. "You can't just, I can and I want to." He stepped forward. "You once told me you were used to building things that didn't last. I want to help you build something that does." Maya swallowed hard. "This isn't just about the foundation, is it?" "No," he said softly. "It's about our life. I want more with you, not just shared projects." "Shared everything." She reached up, her fingers resting at the collar of his shirt. "Then let's not wait," he blinked. "Wait for what?" "The wedding. Let's do it this weekend. Small, quiet, just the people who matter." He grinned, something bright and rare flickering in his face. "Are you sure?" "Completely." Outside, the rain eased into a fine mist. 3 days later, Maya stood barefoot on the wide stone terrace of a villa nestled in the Hudson Valley, the hem of her silk dress lifting in the breeze. Sienna fussed with the last of the floral arrangements, while a soft quartet played beneath strings of warm lights. The ceremony was simple, just friends, a few family members, and the quiet hush of nature around them. Tristan waited at the end of the aisle in a charcoal suit, no tie, his expression unguarded. When Maya walked toward him, there was no music loud enough to cover the thundering in her chest, but she didn't falter. Not once, as they exchanged vows, neither made promises they couldn't keep. There were no declarations of perfection, only honesty. Trust. A commitment to keep choosing each other, even when it got hard. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Tristan didn't wait. He pulled her in, kissed her like the world had narrowed to just that moment. They didn't throw a grand reception. Instead, they shared a long dinner under the stars, candles flickering between plates of handmade pasta and local wine. Guests offered toasts that were less about success and more about growth, about how love, when rooted in truth, could become its own kind of legacy. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the music had faded, Maya and Tristan lay on the wide balcony, side by side on a thick quilt. the stars above them like scattered diamonds. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't shown up to finish that rooftop arrangement?" she asked, her head resting on his chest. "I would have found another excuse to meet you," he said. "Eventually. You sound so certain." "I am." He turned slightly, brushing hair from her face. "There are a million ways this could have gone, but I would have kept looking. Because once you appeared, it was like something in me woke up." She smiled, eyes glassy from the weight of everything they'd built together. "We're not two halves of a whole." "No," he said. "We're two wholes who chose each other." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to chase or survive. It felt like home. 2 years later, the mentorship program had grown into a full-fledged creative institute. Maya led weekly design labs, and her former interns now taught new students. The Foundation's gala had become the most anticipated philanthropic event of the year, not for its luxury, but for its impact. Tristan still ran Foster Dynamics, but he'd carved out time to return to the things he loved: building, painting, mentoring young inventors. He and Maya had a rhythm now, a life that wasn't quiet but was full, whole, real. On the shelf above their fireplace sat the puzzle box he had given her the night of their gallery date. It remained unopened not because she couldn't solve it, but because she chose not to. Some puzzles, she had learned, weren't meant to be rushed. Some were meant to be lived.